Tonight, I have a 4-man power as well as the esports protected plays. First, to recap the previous video's picks, they did go 1 and 3 here, so the correlation with Bastoni and Jorginho did not end up hitting because Jorginho ended up getting subbed off like pretty early. I think it was around the 50th minute. So unfortunate on that. Then I also went for Jonquel Jones on her under points with Sabrina's under assists to correlate them two together. This is a very strong pairing. I mean, you should pretty much be taking this every time New York is playing. Unfortunately, despite the juice, they both ended up going over rather than under, but you can see just how strong these correlated pairings are. I know they didn't pan out with Italy, but it's very rare in soccer that they're going to split. And what I mean by splitting is that you get one win and one loss. Normally, they're going to be both green and both red, which does look bad, but in reality, you're turning a 4-man into essentially a 2-man, right? Because you're playing in stacks, you're playing in pairs, and you want 2 pairs to green out together rather than taking 4 random props. So it's super powerful to correlate, and you could see it working well in this case. I went for the QB and a wide receiver on their under passing yards and receiving yards over in the CFL, and then I stacked up goals allowed in the first 10 minutes with an assist for Draisaitl. So since the goal in first 10 minutes hit, Draisaitl was actually the assister of that goal, so these two cashed within the same play. And of course, these two cash together because if a QB is throwing less passing yards, it's only normal that the wide receivers are going to be getting less receiving yards. So there is some CFL tonight, and that's exactly what we're going to be playing in this slip to start it off. The first play we're going with is Cameron Dukes on his under 262.5 passing yards, and we're going to be taking his wide receiver. It's the only one available here. That's going to be Bailey on his under 62.5 receiving yards. Now, I see a lot of people going over to CFL and just jamming the overs. More often than not, the value is actually on the unders because Prizepicks knows people love rooting on the overs. Typically, in the long run, the under is going to be more beneficial because there's just too much juice or too many passing yards on these specific players. And I'll prove that to you right now. If you check Cameron Dukes, he's set at 262.5 passing yards on Prizepicks. On Underdog, he's set at 254.5. That's 8 passing yards of advantage we're getting on Prizepicks. Same thing for the other QB on Edmonton. He's set at 295.5 passing yards on Underdog. Set at 307.5 passing yards on Prizepicks. That's 12 passing yards that is 12 whole passing yards of advantage. That is absolutely massive. And the same thing for the receivers. If you check Rashid, he set at 54.5. He's set at 54.5 on Underdog. Again, we're getting him at 62.5 on Prizepicks. Another 8 receiving yards of advantage. That is another 8 receiving yards of advantage. And you're going to see the same concept for the other 2 wide receivers for Edmonton. 75.5 on Prizepicks, 67.5 on Underdog. Same thing for Dylan Mitchell. He's set at 58.5 on Prizepicks, 54.5 on Underdog. You could be arguing, how do you know who's better, Prizepicks or Underdog at setting these lines? Well, you could go and compare it to even more sports books, and if we check Bet365, Dukes is set even lower than Underdog at 249.5. Remember, 262.5 on Prizepicks. And same thing for the receivers, except this Eugene Lewis guy. He's set at 77.5 on Bet365. We've met 75.5 on Prizepicks. So if I was doing a stack, which I did do a stack on a different slip for the Discord, I would go with Dylan Mitchell instead of Eugene Lewis. Why? Because I have 2 data points saying that Dylan Mitchell is too high, because on Bet365, he's actually set at 51.5. So we're getting 7 points of advantage there, and we're getting points of advantage on Underdog. For the Eugene Lewis guy, we're getting advantage over Underdog, but we're not getting advantage over Bet365. And since they're both wide receivers, they're both going to be very correlated with the QB either way. So you might as well go for the points of advantage because the correlation is going to be as strong either way. Now, I'm not going to stack all these guys together in the same game. We'll only get an 8x, and honestly, it doesn't really make sense. But I just want to show you the fact that on Prizepicks, normally these guys are set too high, again, because people love jamming the overs. So you want to be on the unders pretty much most of the time. So we're going to go with the double under on these guys. I already know these guys are correlated, and the goal is to find more or less. And in this case, the less is the correct play. Maybe not tonight, but in the long run, as you're playing the less, you're going to see it hit a bit more often than the over. So remember that when you're using the CFL players tomorrow in this Sunday game. I'll probably have a video out for that either way. But just in case you're not watching tomorrow, both these QBs are probably set too high. I mean, I didn't really look into it, but just keep that into consideration. Now, to end this slip off, I'm actually going to go over to an even more correlated prop. That's going to be in soccer, and I've been playing these throughout the Euros. You've been seeing in the videos when I'm stacking 2 guys, they're either both going green or both going red. Unless someone gets subbed off, about 80% of the time, these guys are going to be going within the same direction. Now, once again, we're going to have to think about what plays we want to go with and what is the correct direction. I'm eyeing this Romania game at 3 p.m. versus Belgium. I don't really like any of the Belgium stacks, but I do like the Romania stacks. You could see last game, this guy, Dennis Mann, got 17 passes attempted. Tonight, they're up against Belgium, which is a much tougher matchup than Ukraine. I mean, Romania won 3-0 last game, and he still didn't clear this line at 17. And he didn't clear it because he's playing laterally. I'll show you in a bit, but we're also going to stack up with this guy here, Andrew, on his under 29.5 passes attempted. Again, he didn't even clear this versus Ukraine. In a 3-0 win. Tonight, we have a much harder matchup. I'll just show you how much Belgium is favored tonight. The minus 225 money line. Romania is really not expected to do well here, despite the fact that they won 3-0 their first game. So I am liking the double unders. Normally, I would consider for getting passes of value, I might want to go in a double over, but I compared these lines already to other sportsbooks. I'm not going to show you in the video, but Man is set at 22.5 on Underdog, and Ratu set at 29.5, which is exactly the same as Prizepicks. Also checked 2 other books. So in terms of line discrepancies, there is none, right? We have the exact same lines. but I am liking the double under. If we go and check the lineup, Rachu's playing at right back. Dennis Mann is playing at right mid. It's very rare for these guys to be playing passes, especially if they're playing down the left side of the pitch more often. It's impossible for these guys to get passes. On top of that, Dennis Mann is an attacking player, but Dennis Mann could easily get subbed off, and in soccer, when you're subbed off, you do not go back on. So again, that's another reason why the under is preferable. So there's a lot of things pointing towards that the double under is the correct play rather than the double over. First of all, these guys didn't even cash the last game versus Ukraine. Second of all, Dennis Mann might get subbed off. Third of all, Belgium is the much better team and they actually lost last game. They're going to be coming for vengeance. They're going to want to have possession of this game. It's super important that Belgium wins this. And if they end up playing well and holding enough possession, these guys are not going to cash their passes. So double under, this is the full 4-man slip. It pays 9.5x because there's a lot of correlation, but these things are so correlated, so it's still worth that slight payout nerf. And I wouldn't even be surprised if this reverse sweeps or you see these two green and these two red, because that's just how strong the correlation is. So we're going to lock this one in as the first slip, and I'll show you just replacements for these two guys because it does start at 3 p.m. and you might be watching later. You could go over the passes attempted and literally grab any combination from these later games here in Copa America. We have the Ecuador players you could grab a double over on. We got the Venezuela players you could grab the double over on. You also have all kinds of Mexico players that you grab the double overs on. So basically have a lot of variety here. I'm liking is this guy here, Arteaga and Chavez on their over passes attempted. So 39.5 for Arteaga, 30.5 for Chavez. And if we go over to their lines, it's pretty much flat what you're getting in math. So same thing on the sports books, but I don't like Montez and Alvarez because they're set too high. So 53.5 and 57.5 is what Bet365 has in math. And you see we're getting 2 more passes on both these players, but we want to be on the over on this specific game because Mexico is that heavy favorite and they're more likely to hold possession. So I'm liking these 2 overs specifically rather than these 2 overs. If we check the lineup right here, we got Arteaga at that left back position with Chavez. So when they're playing in these triangles here with Vasquez and running down the line, that is the opportunity for these guys to both go over the passes prop. That means it's going to be a lot of passes between Arteaga and Chavez. And of course, they're going to clear their passes prop together, ideally on the double over. So that's a good replacement you could go with if you're watching this after 3 p.m. and you missed the Romania game. Now it's also Saturday and I know a lot of you might have an esports protected play. This is personally what I went with. It's a stack in Valorant and I went with 2 props on League of Legends. I went with 2 props on League of Legends that looked a bit too overvalued. So that's Decimus here and Grevtar. We have Sentinels versus Energy. This is expected to be a tighter game. -188 money line for Sentinels, but that is nothing crazy. So if these games are as tight as expected, you might see an OT and you might see both these guys go on the double over. John doesn't have any value compared to Underdog, but Victor is set at 32.5 on Underdog. So we're getting a kill of protection there. So that's a nice Valorant stack. Then these 2 guys in League of Legends, if you go and compare this to Underdog, you'll see that the under 2.5 kills is actually set at 0.85x. So basically, Underdog is putting juice on this guy. They're saying his under is way more likely on the under 2.5 to hit than his over 2.5. His over 2.5 is actually a scorcher. So you don't want to be on the over 2.5 in this case. Definitely want to go and take it on Prizepicks and grab the under. That's why I went for that guy. And then if we go over to Grevtar, he set at 2.5 on Underdog with heavy juice towards the over. So 0.8x multiplier on the 2.5. Basically, they're paying you less if you're taking his over. But if you noticed on Prizepicks, we have them at 3.5. There is a massive difference between 2.5 and 3.5 kills, of course. Think of like 3s in NBA. If you're getting an extra 3 on a player, that is absolutely massive. So this is what I went for the protected play. The problem is this Grevtar guy is starting pretty soon here. You'll probably have like half an hour to drop this play in if you're watching this video as soon as it dropped. I'll just go with this Valorant stack in a 2 power. It's a free protected play, so don't worry about it too much. So those are going to be the 2 full slips for tonight.